Hey everyone, Jordan here with another interview from Daddyhunt. This time I'm speaking with Aidan Wharton.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Aidan Wharton. I am a writer and former actor, I guess, from Hawaii originally, but now I live in New York. I write a Substack newsletter called Gay Buffet that is about all things queer culture and then queer sex as well. And yeah, it's been a really exciting past couple years in this space, and I'm really grateful that I get to do this and talk relationships and sex.
Yeah. Okay, well, good segue. So, Aidan, you're I'd say you're a bit younger than the average guys I interview for Daddyhunt.
Sure.
So I found you by when you were speaking about age gap relationships. Would you mind just kind of touching on how that came about within your general queer writing
hmm
and kind of what you've seen as the impact of that once you started talking about it?
Yeah, of course. So I started doing this Reels series on Instagram back in June or July called the Gay BCs. And I thought, here's just like a fun way to do a bite sized bit of information that makes people think a little bit more. And the first series ended because I wanted to do something after Pride. And then in August, I decided to do another one, but it was going to be all about relationships. I love relationships. I just got married to my husband. We've been together for 7 years. We are open, so I love exploring all the different types of relationships that queer people get to have. I think we are sort of on the forefront of whatever our relationships want to be because we, for hundreds and thousands of years, have not been able to have the same types of relationships as hetero couples. And so we sort of get to make them up as we go. And I think that's a really incredible opportunity that we have. And so the first one was age gaps. A is for age gaps. And it really took off in a way that was funny because I thought, oh my gosh, here I am. I have cracked the code. Like, it's going viral. I'm going to be great. And then it was like, oh no, this is just something people really want to talk about. And in that video, it just explored why they're more common in queer relationships. And some of the general trends were our dating pool is different, our dating pool is smaller. And I think that has something to do with it, but doesn't really look at the main image, which is that we also just like don't have the same relationship education that straight couples necessarily get to have. And this is where it sort of got controversial in the comments because some people think that having an education component of a relationship is bad, and some people think it is great. And I personally am of the great scenario. I grew up in rural Hawaii. I didn't know many other gay people. I think I had one other gay person in my school. And so my sexual education was not very hands-on. And then once I moved to New York, I moved here for college for a year, then went out to Pennsylvania for 3, and then came back. But so much of how I learned about myself sexually was through these relationships that I did have with older men.
Sure. So to
Yeah.
clarify education, you mean in the sense that each partner is really teaching the other something in a very like empirical sense.
Right. And like, it doesn't have to be quite as clinical, but when I came back to New York after college, I, started dating a couple. I started dating a throuple. I was 21 and most of them were in their early 30s. And it just really broadened my horizons about what relationships could look like. And so when I met my now husband, I told him pretty early on that here's this wealth of experience that I've been having the past like year, 2 years. And while I don't want to do, openness now, I want to really get a solid foundation first, but I am really curious about making sure that whatever relationship I have and we have is one that really is something that we both created together. And I don't think I would have had that knowledge and wherewithal if I hadn't had all of these experiences with people who like knew more than I did. And I've always sort of dated older. I've always been like the wise kid, which always was such a
Hmm.
compliment. And I just think, like, especially intergenerational gay relationships are so important. And, we have such a emphasis on youth and emphasis on looks. and we don't always embrace those intergenerational relationships, and I think that is dumb.
Sure. Aiden, yeah, you're speaking my language. I have like a thousand questions to go off of that. Focusing on your relationships, what were some of the
Yeah.
main things that you felt that you learned from these intergeneral relationships? And something I'd like to know, like how many were romantic, how many were strictly sexual, how many were social, or a combination of the three? Because I feel like something that I've really
Hmm.
appreciated with intergenerational relationships is it can start one way, end a different way, be something else in the middle. And I think because ideally you're the other partner when you're younger has
Right.
seen a little bit more, they're able to navigate those waters a bit better.
Yeah, I think it was a nice blend. Like, I'm not a good physical only person. I definitely need some sort of connection. I like to know who I'm sleeping with. And so they definitely were, there was some like more casual experiences, but like especially with the couple in the throuple, I was never in their relationship, but I was very much it blended the lines between friendship and relationship and whatnot. And for me, those relationships actually felt like the safest place for me to explore because here were all of these people who I could have lovely, intimate connections with, but I didn't have to address the like, what are we? I didn't have to worry that they were going to catch feelings. I didn't have to worry about all of that. And so I was like, oh, here is a playground, a sandbox where I can really just figure out what I like. They, introduced me to like the gay nightlife scene and sort of just not even just like parties, but like house parties and apartment parties and helped me meet
Hmm.
people. And it became such a lovely part of my social circle that I wouldn't have had and didn't have through my peers who were the same age as me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think our experiences are very similar in that for my first gay bars, my first parties with, yeah,
Hmm.
apartment parties, house parties when I was 2021 were all because I was also dating is a stronger word, but like seeing a couple
Right.
who the three of us got along really well. I never felt like I was really infringing on their relationship. It's more that they had this established relationship and I was a new friend in a way. And to this day, we're still friends. It's been over 10 years and we still
Right.
are friends. The sexual component, I think, over time, we've just gotten very comfortable around each other where we don't need that anymore, but we're still friends. And I
Right.
was able to learn from them so much, not just learn in the sense of, you know, oh, this is where I should go out living in a given city. No, like actually learning about queer culture and queer life that came before me, in that we're probably around the same age. We had the internet, but we didn't have it in such a way where it is now, where like back then I had to really seek out information versus now you're just getting it poured onto you. I'm really grateful that the older men in my community were kind of able to guide me in the right way and give me that information in a time where it's probably harder to come by.
Totally. And beyond just factual information, yeah, I've really poured myself into queer history because, again, it's something that I didn't get growing up. But beyond just
Hmm.
that, it's like these people, and yeah, many of whom are still friends now, like taught me just about how I wanted to exist in the world and what was possible and where I could go, not physically, but emotionally with
Hmm.
people. And, I'm so like a lot of my writing is about open relationships and a lot of sort of everything that I do is about connection, right?
Hmm.
I think as we keep going to this fiercely accelerating digital divide, we're becoming more connected, but much less connected. And the connections that we have are much more surface. And in my belief, I'm like, well, why would you want to shutter that connection? And a big part of learning about that was learning that through these individuals who I was like, oh my gosh, I can have a boyfriend and a best friend who I sleep with, and friends who I sleep with, and acquaintances who I don't sleep with, but we cuddle or have intimate conversations. Like, it just really exploded my view of relationships in a way that I'm really grateful for now and has sort of become a core pillar of my personality.
Absolutely. That sounds great. And it sounds like, yeah, the having those older generations really guide you in the right way. is a real key
Right.
to that. Something I like to emphasize when I have these conversations, and tell me if you agree, is that one perk, and I think you were getting at this with why these even exist in the queer world, is that the divide between the older and the younger generations in the queer world is so much smaller than in
Right.
straight world, and it's. I think a lot of because a lot of the societal pressures on straight people that we may not have, but also it's like we're going to the same places. The amount of spaces we exist in are limited in itself. So in a given city, there's only, instead of 300 bars to choose from, there's probably only 3 or 4. So you're all in the same spaces, listening to the same music, knowing the same pop culture. And that's something that I really love. I think that's like
Right.
one of the best parts of queer culture. And I don't see it stopping. I just hope that, the certain ageism that does exist in each generation, my own included, is able to kind of wean itself out as people understand how important it is to maintain these relationships with the older generations.
Right. And I think, it's so interesting because I do totally agree. It's like the spaces that we have are really unique. And so therefore we have to all coexist in them in certain ways. And yet I do feel like we are also sort of hamstrung by the sexuality of it, because I think especially a lot of young people are worried about intergenerational relationships, because they're like, well, what if they want something from me that I don't want to give them? And I would probably put all of the blame of that on the young person. And, do you know Julius, the bar in the West Village?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's the best. But I did a profile on them like a month and a half ago when I went in and talked to one of the managers. And we probably talked for like half an hour on a Tuesday afternoon. They were closed. And he proceeded to tell me like all of the stories of all of the pictures on the walls and all of the stories about the people who've come in and what Julius used to be during AIDS and what it is now. And I've always had like a real strong connection to that. Like we literally were sitting there crying on a Tuesday afternoon, two strangers. But I thought like this is something that we wouldn't really get. Like my generation, our generation, the younger generations don't ask for that.
Mhm.
And in my mind, that is such a irresponsible like lack of investment, because there's so much history and so much of it is only verbal, because so much of queer history had to be secretive. And so I'm like, no, like, well, let's ask all these questions. Let's like look at all these photos. Like we have a friend in Fire Island who his neighbor came over. I think he's maybe 65, 70, with just these binders of photos. And we spent an entire night, just me and him sitting on the couch looking at them and him being like, this was my friend and this was his story. And I just was sobbing on the couch. I love to cry. But again, I'm just like, there's so much rich history here. And we being the younger generations, either like don't care enough to ask about it or too scared to. And I say we can do
Sure.
better.
Okay, yes. A ton of good points. I'm going to segue into your work then, because I
Yeah.
feel like your work is the stepping stones to preserve that history and to get it
Thank
into
you.
more people's faces. To close what you were saying, yes, I feel like even me, as someone who's only been attracted to older guys, even the
Mhm.
day I came out, I was in it because I thought they were hot. I thought they were cool.
Right.
I liked the experiences. And then everything else I learned from it, my partner who grew up in that time during HIV, and hearing his stories and his experiences has been even eye opening for me, even feeling like I already was kind of in that world. So there
Right.
is, even the younger guys who are in the know, there's still an unlimited amount of information out there to learn more. So
Right.
I feel like that's what you're getting at with your work. I'd love to hear more
Thank
about
you.
how this Substack came around and everything else you're working on.
Yeah. What a what a great segue. Thanks. I started my Substack 2 years ago. I was working at this little media company, and I was really disheartened with how they were covering anything queer that was happening. Like it was around the time of like the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light boycott and Don't Say Gay. And the ethos of the company was how to have conversations with people you might not agree with. And that is like a big ethos of mine as well. But whenever they covered anything gay, I was like, well, you've got like a left of center and a more conservative host. And you're not getting why teachers are so integrally important to queer kids. You're not getting any of the nuance here. And so I went to them. They also were like really big on a Substack. And so I said, hey, like, can I start my own? And they said, you do it for a little bit. And then if you like it, bring it back to us. The company was downsizing very quickly. So I was like, okay, but if I get laid off, which seems very possible, like, can I keep it? And they said, of course. Did it for like a month, got laid off. And then I ended up going on tour with a musical that I had done here on Broadway. And then the tour came around and they're like, do you want to do it again? And I said, sure. And I thought, okay, here's an opportunity for me to travel the country. And what can I do besides just this show? And I had this little Substack and I said, okay, I'm going to take every week. We went to a new city every 2 weeks, every 3. And I'm going to explore the queer history in each city, see if I can talk to people. And then I raised money for a queer nonprofit in each city as well, because I thought there are so many incredible people around the country who are not getting any of the credit that they deserve, that are sometimes doing harder work than like the people in New York and San Francisco and LA, not because of to the detriment of any of those people. It's just they're in conservative states. We were in Ohio, we were in the South, and in every single place I found incredible people who were doing incredible things. And so it felt really empowering for me to be able to platform them and uplift them and raise money. And then when I came back from tour about a year ago, the election happened, and I was sitting in my office waiting for all of the people who I looked up to say something. And no one was saying anything. It was the morning after. Everyone was depressed.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't have a huge platform, but I have a take, and I want to make people feel better because I want to feel better, and no one's making me feel better. So I wrote an article about it. I posted a little reel about it, and that informed how I wanted to move it forward. So I carried on. It was a little bit more political for a couple months. And then about April of this year, it really started to shift into what it is now. So I do a cultural piece on Wednesdays and then a sex piece on Fridays. Obviously, it's Substack, so they want you to have like a free and a paid version. Mm-hmm. And so the sex portion is like the premium paywalled version. And I was like, let me just see what happens. My unemployment had run out, and I was like, and then it really started to take off. And the pieces that started to take off showed me that so many people had so many questions and had such a hunger to talk about the stuff that we weren't talking about. And so what would end up happening is I would do these surveys on Instagram, use that sort of community information, and then write about it and talk about it. And, it ranged from like the ethics of cruising in the steam room and what really makes people enjoy that, and what pieces of advice they would have for people who've never done it, to I've like written a lot about open relationships, and that I feel like in the same way to age gaps is something that is really controversial, feels like the wrong word, but people have a lot of feelings.
Yes, it's something that people will have an opinion on no matter what, either for both. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, that has sort of become my happiest thing to talk about, open relationships, because I do think that most gay men try them or think about them. A lot of people right now are learning about them, straight, queer, otherwise. Mm-hmm. They are rising in popularity, and yet we still like don't have any tools to do them well. And it's either
like, figure out what makes sense for you and your partner. That's like the only advice that people,
And that is true. Like, we should all be making the relationships that work for us. But I ended up writing a piece debunking relationship myths, mm-hmm. or open relationship myths, and then like sex myths as well. And those got so much response. And I was like, wow, people really want help here. And, I think my take on open relationships is that it's all from a place of expansion and like loveliness. And that also like there's a really big like image problem. Like
Hmm.
I don't think we're like able to talk about them in a way that's not super clinical or just like, well, you're a slut. And I want that middle ground where it's, well, how do we talk about them from a place of emotional intelligence and in a way that still like makes you want to go have sex with people or have these intimate connections. I was like looking at certain books and I was like, they're all really helpful. Like I love, Ethical Slut and Polysecure
Hmm.
and Mating in Captivity. Like they're all so helpful, but they're also like really clinical. I also realized there's not a single relationship book written by a man. They're all written by women.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Um, and so I just think there's like so much there. And if we can just strip away the emotions around them and the stigma and the baggage that people have, I personally think that they're the best way to sort of combat this loneliness epidemic that we are currently in.
Sure. Yep. I think that's all true. I think that I see the reaction to people when I talk about daddy and daddy culture and age gap
Right.
relationships in a very similar way to open relationships, but they're all realities and they're all things that people are into. I'd say like the main example I'll see on like the daddy side of it is like guys my age who wouldn't change their age filter to be 30 to 60. But if
Mm-hmm.
they meet a hot 60-year-old at the bar, they're going to go home with them. They just
Right.
like don't want to admit to themselves in their day-to-day life that that's something that they could be into.
Right.
Kind of like open relationships of like when you're in that actual day-to-day relationship with someone, when does it make sense to change the boundaries and have different communication styles? When it makes sense. And same thing, like when it makes sense for someone to date someone different than who they normally date, it's all dependent on where they are. But you're right, having the right guidance and the right people kind of at least giving guidelines and some mentorship is very helpful.
Right. And, you know, we are in the era of too much discourse. Like that's just everything should be talked
Everything.
about. Everything, like it's just insane. And so we're all conditioned to have opinions. I think that's what really
Hmm.
shocked me about the video that I
Yeah.
made is just how much fighting there was in the comments. And that's
How so?
another just, I think it was I forgot like what question I posed exactly in the little poll, but what's your experience with age gaps, I think.
Sure.
And it just went the line of like, I love them, younger people talking about dating older people talking about dating younger. And then of course it evolved into the, well, daddy issues, grooming, abuse, manipulation. And I just I stopped reading them because who reads comments on the internet? It's a terrible idea and you never should.
I do.
Um okay, you do. I like
It's my
on my own stuff.
it's my main problem in life. But yeah.
On my own stuff, I'm just like, I can't deal with this. And because they don't if somebody wants to have an engaged conversation, I'm in. We will talk. If somebody just wants to fight, I don't want to deal with that. And so much of it was just fighting. And again, there's so much infighting in the queer community because it is safer to fight with someone in your own community than someone who is on the far right. And we feel so powerless. So we're like, well, how can we get our anger out? And it's
Hmm.
in the comment section. Like that's just where we are now. And so I think we are in this era of so much discourse and it really isn't helpful. And it isn't helpful because we also start to pathologize our relationships when, if you're in a relationship with somebody who is a daddy and you enjoy being taken care of, somebody on the
Power to
internet
you.
could say that is manipulation. Someone could say
Yep.
that's grooming. And someone could be like, I want to be taken care of.
Exactly.
God, the world is so
Yeah.
stressful. Like, why
And it
wouldn't I want to
doesn't,
be?
right. And it doesn't discredit those experiences. Like
No.
I can speak to my experiences. When I was 19, I ended up in some precarious situations. Am I grateful they happened? Absolutely. I needed to grow up and have some learning experiences. However, yes, they are serious and they are talked about. I mean,
Right.
for Daddyhunt itself, we have very strict policies on how people are treated on the app. any signs of that manipulation. And from both sides, like, I don't want to put all the onus on daddies. There's plenty of younger guys who
Right.
seek out taking advantage of older guys for the wrong reason. And there's older guys who take advantage of younger guys. And there's also people the same age who take advantage of each other. I think that's like the point I'm trying to stress of, like,
Right.
you could be attracted to older guys and you can find the right one and the right dynamic for you, whatever that may look like, and vice versa. You can also be dating someone your own age in a very toxic relationship. So it's just a matter of being open-minded to those different types of relationships and finding the one that makes sense for you. And it could be someone who's 60. It's just a matter of seeking that out.
Right. And I feel like if we're putting age gap relationships and open relationships in a similar camp, if those relationships fail, the first instinct is to blame those two traits.
Right.
When I'm like, that's so dumb. Like, there's so many other reasons, but we're so quick to label those two things as like, well, that's on them for pursuing that. And it discredits the entire relationship.
Yeah. I did read some of the comments on your age gap video that were, my partner and I are 22, 32, whatever years apart, and we've been together for 7 years and we're married and
Right.
things are great. There were plenty of examples like that of people super excited to share their experience. And I think a lot of it is very covert. Like, I
Right.
mean, unless someone has a Instagram influencer presence, you're not going to really notice these age gap relationships that are way more common than people realize. I mean, even just for
Yeah.
Daddyhunt, like, we did an event last month in Palm Springs, and like 3 different guys, super low key, were like, "Oh yeah, I met my partner on Daddyhunt. Maybe it was 10 years ago, maybe it was a few months ago, but they were younger guys. They met someone older. It's happening on every single app. It's happening at bars. It is,
Mhm.
and it's a great thing when it happens. I think people are very proud of it when it can be successful and they're getting the right things out of that relationship.
And I also think we, as I'll say gay men specifically here, have a real gift also when it comes to sexuality and aging. When I was on tour, my two closest friends were gay men, 55 and approaching 60, early 50s and late 50s maybe.
Mhm.
And I'm just turned 30, so that's a math.
Your own
20 to 30 age gap.
Mhm.
And I like adored them. Like, we would spend all our time together. We just like hung out, and it was so interesting talking to them too. I think one of them was on Daddyhunt, and we aren't constrained to the same aging despair, shall I say, that
Yeah.
straight people,
Straight men,
especially straight
yeah.
women. It's really hard for straight women. I'm not going to discount
It's
that.
really hard for straight women, but also it's different priorities for straight men. Straight men
Right.
don't have the same sort of priorities is the right word. That
Yeah.
the 50-year-olds you're on tour with are still popular. They still have the ability to be
Right.
just as sexually active as they were 20 years ago. In fact, I mean, I hear anecdotes from daddies who are getting more and more popular every decade.
Right.
And they're approaching 60 and doing better than they were when they were 40, because now there are even more people's types.
Right.
And that's a great thing. That should be celebrated.
I did a Substack live with Lawrence Witterman, and he said the exact same thing. He said, as I'm approaching, I'm like forgetting all of these ages, but he's like, as I'm entering this new decade in life, I am suddenly much more attractive than I've ever been. And what a gift that is, in my opinion.
I mean, I love seeing guys age well. There's plenty. It's like,
Exactly.
I'll see daddies I follow. They'll post like throwback 20 years ago. I'm like, oh, you look better now. Like,
Right.
I like you now. And that's the thing. I think gay men, specifically gay men, like, there is something I try to like lean into when it makes sense, but also like criticize when it makes sense. There is a culture of taking care of yourself. There also is, I think, a culture of like, oh no, I'm 30. Oh no, I'm 40. Like, oh, everything's over for me. I'm approaching 30. And I'm like, there's other reasons in my life why like 30 is a little bit scary, but like my looks and my sexuality and my ability to meet people, I'm not concerned about that.
Right.
Because I've seen these guys I know decade over decade really grow into themselves. I'm actually kind of excited to see who I become in the next decade. And also, if you go to the average gay function, I'd say the median age is in their 40s for the most part. And that's been my experience living in cities. And so I think that's something that you can be super excited about as a gay person, that you just will evolve with whatever that age group is, but you're not completely shut out of life like a straight person could be.
Exactly. And I just turned 30, so what, welcome
Yeah,
when's your birthday?
in a year. Yeah. So
Okay, so in a year. But I think I look back at myself 10 years ago, and I'm like, no, I'm so happy that I get to keep getting older. It's such a,
it's a great mindset.
it is. Andrea Gibson, who passed away in the summer, they have this article and quote about they struggled with cancer, and there's the, like the Face app, the old age filter.
Hmm.
They wrote a poem about their wife showing them what the wife looked like and then what they looked like on the old age filter, and they just broke down because they thought, what a gift. And I probably won't ever get to see this, but like every wrinkle,
Mm.
I forget the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of like every wrinkle is someone I've loved, and how fully I get to have loved if my face is full of wrinkles. Or that really has put aging into perspective, where it really is a gift.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. I like that. And that is a beautiful way to put it. And I think like how I see it, I try not to get superficial about it because it is a full body experience.
Right.
And that like, yes, physically, I think, like I said, I like how the men around me are aging, but also in the same way, everyone's growing and being different persons, different versions of themselves as they have that more life experience.
Right.
I did want to ask one more question about your tour,
Yes.
your queer bar tour around the country. How have you seen kind of the definition of daddy over that year kind of change and evolve from your perspective? And then I guess just in general, being a gay man in New York for years, like how have you really seen that change over time?
Yeah, I honestly think it has become more fluid. Ugh. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think if I were to look 10 years ago, which is when I first was sort of introduced to daddy culture when I moved to New York, it was age and looks. And I think now it is a bit more about like caretaking. I have this long form article I really want to write about like the rise in like dom sub dynamics over the past decade.
Hmm.
And I think as the world gets crazier and more fractured and more stressful, we're all looking for the ways in which we could feel a little bit more secure. And I think to me, daddyhood, and whenever like someone calls me daddy, or if I'm looking for that, it's more about the energy that carries with it rather than the aesthetic and the age. And not that those don't apply anyway, but I think it's becoming a bit more about connection and intimacy. But also that's just how I approach it.
Yeah.
So that could just be
No,
me.
no, no, no. And that's what I thought you were going to say. And that's something that I also am understanding a bit more. So I had a like very corporate job for years. And I was living in a smaller city, and I kind of had like my narrow definition of daddy that I had when I like my like highlight of the year was going to P Town or whatever. And then I
Oh,
was in New York. I was in New York for most of last year. And I was like, oh, the definition of daddy changed while I was away. That now I have
mm-hmm.
friends in their early 30s who are maybe dating someone in their mid 20s, and they're like embodying the daddy persona because in
Right.
their relationship, that's what it is. Either whether it's the dom, whether it's the caretaker, whether it's the leader, or there's like 1,000 definitions you can kind of tie into that. I'm like, okay, this is changing. This is not just such a, and I think this is a good thing. It's not such a like hard and fast, like hyper masculine,
Right.
physically intimidating older presence. That's how I saw the definition for years. That's what I enjoy. But
Mm-hmm.
like the definition for everyone else has broadened, and
Right.
that's great. I think that's something even at Daddyhunt, I'm like, okay, the image on the app is super is what it was. It was like probably 2014 when I came out, and that's what I think of as a daddy, and that's what it is. That's going to evolve with the times. And it's cool. I think it's a great thing. I think it's a little bit overused. Like now any celebrity who has a beard is a daddy. That I'm
Correct.
like, okay, let's chill out a bit. But like people are just having fun with that. And if
Yeah.
anything, daddy has become a much less like scary word than it could have been years ago. So,
Right. Which, and like, I still think though that like I think of the logo for the app, the icon, I'm like, that is also
mhm.
still, can be a quintessential daddy. And it always makes me laugh when people are like, call me a daddy, because I just have like such. I'm most often told I'm like have such like sweet good boy energy because I'm like very just like I'm very curious. I'm very engaged with people, and I think it really though can switch on a mood.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
again,
yeah. I get that.
we overanalyze and overlabel anything anyway. So
Exactly. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts on dom and sub relationships. I think a lot of it's
yeah,
intertwined, of course. I think the leather community has a huge impact on how we see these things, but most people aren't involved in leather communities. So to eat myself included, I'm a hands length into it sometimes. So, and that's just, and it's not, that's on a self-selected basis. So I think that a lot of it is rooted in that community and has
hmm
taken on a life of its own outside of it, which we may not understand. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that when you publish that.
when I write it
Yeah.
sometime in the new year.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, another good segue. What do you have coming up for you in the future and where can people find you?
Yes. So I think this will hopefully air sometime in early January. And so on
Yes.
January 13th, I am launching my own podcast. So this is a great little tester moment for me. It's called
Yeah.
Getting Close. And it's, again, all about connection and community and giving people really actionable ways to feel less lonely and find community wherever they are. It's something I'm really passionate and excited about. We've got a nice mix of celebrities and cultural figures and scientists to really get at connection in every single way. So that'll be called Getting Close on any streaming platform. You can find me at Gay Buffet on Substack, and that's Wednesday and Friday articles ranging from, like I said, open relationships. We did one about the many factors about being uncut. We did one about cruising. We've done a lot about cruising. So it's always just a really fun place to sort of learn about the nuances of sex that we aren't always talking about. And some other exciting projects that I can't talk about yet, but stay tuned. You can
Cool.
find me on Instagram at Aidan Wharton, Aidan, not En,
I love that.
and which everyone does. Everyone does. Yeah, I can't wait to be in touch with all of y'all.
Awesome. Thanks
Yeah,
for this, Aiden. We'll
of
talk soon.
course. Thank you, Jordan.